Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Hey, Connected Life peeps. Justin and Abby here again. And I am really excited about today. We have a wonderful guest on. A story that I had a conversation with someone this last week or so, and it profoundly impacted me for a whole lot of reasons. And I was just like, we're going to do a podcast on this if you'll join us on it. And we're going to get to that in a minute. But Abby and I just recently got back from a trip to San Diego.
Yep.
It was our friend Bryant's 30th birthday, which all of you who listen, you guys have heard of Bryant on here with the Adventure Challenge. And we had an opportunity to go cold plunging and do saunas and surfing and get some massages. It was like a really fun trip. But one of the parts of it that was great was watching Abby cry like a little baby during a breathing exercise.
Oh my gosh. You guys, I am in love. It was a somatic breathing journey that we went on with, we might have them on the podcast sometime, the guy who led it.
Yeah.
And his wife.
Nick and his wife, Paulina, who Nick kind of runs a
breathing thing and a rehab.
Yeah, rehab. Yeah. Yeah. Super cool guy. Love him.
Anyway, they take you on this 30 minutes to an hour journey where you breathe in this certain way. And then they take you on this meditation. And I cried like a little baby.
Yeah, you did.
Just like they have all these videos. I follow these accounts with somatic breath work things. And then I got to experience it finally. And do you know why it worked? Why? Because I went into it being like, I'm probably going to be the only person that doesn't cry. I'm probably going to be the only person that can't make it through the breathing thing. And I just like accepted that I was probably going to be that person. And so I let go of all need for it to be something great or need for it to be this experience. And
right.
so
You
I
just got present in the moment.
I was just present.
There it is. Being present is so difficult sometimes.
It's so difficult.
It's something we run from. I find that like ice plunging, we had a guy a while back that I took into an ice plunge on a men's trip, and he like started scream crying 3 minutes into it and connected with all of his pain. And all of a sudden came up because he had to be so present inside of the 34-degree water.
Well, this is okay. Quick plug. We're doing the Pathway to Freedom. You need to sign up ASAP because it's starting like right now. And one of the things I think is most important is learning how to pay attention to your body. This year in the immersion program, we are going to talk through how to pay attention to release pain from your body. Because I was in counseling for years and I logically understood a lot, but your body carries memories of pain in a different way than your mind does. And so even though I talked about all these things that I'd gone through so many times, I didn't know how to get them out of my body and experience it. So now I've learned how to be connected to my body. And now I'm actually seeing peace in a way that doesn't feel like it's as much work. I mean, it's a lot of work in the beginning. Yeah. But then your body starts to do the work with you instead of against you. That's what the whole Pathway to Freedom is about, learning how your emotions are trying to lead you towards healing, not away from it. But this year, we're going to do a deep dive into the body stuff in the immersion course.
That's awesome.
So sign up now.
And also I've been talking about our life consulting masterclass, 10 months starting January 1st.
Oh yeah,
I've been interviewing so many
life.
people, and it's been one of the greatest gifts. Like just interviewing people, I'm having these impactful stories as we're having conversations, and I'm enjoying that portion of it. That's a really fun time.
Oh, I feel so proud of all the people we've trained. We're creating an army of people that can help the world transform.
Yeah. Speaking of that, facing pain and emotions. One of the things that Abby said to our guest right before we started is pain can what?
Oh, pain can either make you the worst version of yourself or can lead you to the best version of yourself.
Yep. It can be an invitation where you actually dive deep into your heart and start doing something about it, and really beautiful things.
We either become skeptical, hardened, self-protective, hyper-vigilant,
bitter,
anxiety,
resentful.
bitter, yes. And it's easy to go down that path. Or It can bring humility, tenderness. Like when I've gone through hard
repair,
things,
restoration, redemption.
it can bring you face to face with yourself, which is a whole new, it's a lot to do, to face yourself, but then receiving love and forgiveness and connection inside of being imperfect is the most transforming thing you can do.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, one of the things that inspired me to have this conversation is when I sat down with our guest, Tiffany Matthews, and welcome. We ended up getting a chance to have a conversation because someone who had applied for Life Consulting Masterclass started telling me about Tiffany and the background, and we're going to get into her story. And I'm like, I have to talk to her. I need to hear this story that's going on. And it's a story of there was pain inside of her life, and it was either an invitation to grow and become the best expression of herself, or it was an opportunity to become bitter and resentful and shut down. And I love the route that you chose because it created.
Me too.
It created some incredible beauty. So as we start here, Tiffany, do you just want to share a little bit about who you are with our guests?
Sure. Absolutely. It's my joy to talk about me. All of my meanness. Yeah. What we were talking about when Abby was saying that is it's like, you get faced with so much pain. You have all of these coping mechanisms. And then when you end up with like so much pain, you're just like, okay, I'm going to have to literally go live in a cave away from all people, or I'm going to have to figure something out.
Yes.
Because that was pretty much where I felt like I was at. For like a quick like synopsis, I'm like introverted, Enneagram 9. I do like people, but I really like peace.
Sometimes people
I really
are
liked
hard.
fake peace in the past.
Yep.
It was kind of lack of conflict is what I described as peace. And,
The peacekeeper,
right.
Yeah.
Right. And I had no idea how to make peace. No idea whatsoever of how to create and make peace. And
is mostly just like
couple of
run
years
away
back.
from conflict. Is that what your piece was? Just like run away. Is
Oh,
that
yeah.
what? Yeah.
Or it'd be a volcano.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would have peace again because one person got all of my pain from hundreds of people. And then I felt better for a little bit.
Yes. Yep.
That's real.
Very relatable. I was thinking that when you were talking, I was just thinking, oh, it's so good to remember this is the human experience. Everyone goes through like what you just described, about that moment when you're like, I either have to go live in a cave by myself forever or figure this out. I'm like, oh, everybody has a moment like that. Maybe 500 moments like that.
Yeah, I'm going to say a moment like that. That sounds fan. That's great. I'll go with that one. Just one.
Yeah.
Because I was smart like that and just went straight to helping myself and finding my voice. No, it's,
I love that.
mean, I've been in ministry since I was 18. I only got saved when I was 17.
Ooh.
So
you jumped right in.
Oh, yes. And so I jumped straight into performance big time because I didn't know what in the world I was doing.
Totally.
But yeah, so many, many years of performance and just doing what I thought I was supposed to do, being my husband's shadow because he's a fantastic person. So why would I not want to just help him? And he's a wonderful person. He never took my voice away. I just never decided to create who I was or my voice. But yeah, a couple years back, I was like, okay, something's got to give. Something's got to change. I need to change. Things aren't going well. Our marriage was fantastic and rough all at the same time.
Yeah,
that's a great way to explain it. Yes, absolutely.
We have never had a bad marriage, but there is definitely some moments that kept repeating themselves.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways to go about it, like different avenues, different people who have different messages, different tools. And so I was kind of just doing a Mod Podge, trying to find my way through this big world of emotional health and healing and getting inner healing sessions and all the things you're supposed to do. And last year, I finally had a dream that was huge, prophetic dream for me, where you guys were in it.
Ooh.
You guys were in my childhood house with me,
Hmm.
and you wouldn't leave. Like, I was supposed to keep taking you to the hotel, and you're just like, no, I really like it here. I like you guys. I like it here. I'm just going to take my blanket and curl up on this bed that magically appeared, and I'm just going to chill with you.
Oh, I would want to do that.
That's real.
So the next week, I signed up for Pathway to Freedom.
So we haunted you in your dreams, and you ended up in Pathway to Freedom.
Yeah.
I love that.
Because had you been listening to Connected Life prior to that?
I was for a little bit. I would say since maybe the previous year, end of the previous year. What year is this? 20? So end of 22.
Yep.
Wow.
And had some friends, sent some friends through Fully Alive. That I was just like, yeah, I'm a hot mess, but I'm going to send you through the things to help you, and I'll be fine.
It's good. That's good.
That's great. So you end up having that dream after like some different pain in your life and stuff like that.
Do you want to give a quick overview of that?
Had there been pain for a while? Had you been working on emotional health for quite a while up into that point, or what was that?
I had been focusing on healing and emotional health since 2019 for myself.
Wow.
There was just some friend pain that had come up, some family pain. My dad ended up passing away very suddenly. We found out he had cancer in January, and he passed away by March.
Oh,
and when I realized when I already had abandonment issues, that just kind of topples you.
mm-hmm.
And then we had just a lot of staff pain. Like on a church staff, you're pretty close as friends as well.
Oh,
and there was a lot of relationships that went through a lot of pain, a lot of disconnect.
It's hard in a situation like that because they're like simultaneously family and employees, and that's two very confusing worlds to mix.
Yeah, and we're not set up.
I don't feel like I processed my dad at all for a while because
there was so much other stuff.
We were in the middle of a lot of pain with our staff.
Yeah.
And we're not set up for conflict inside a family as it is. And then when friends and family are all involved in like almost business,
work.
Right? Work, right? Like we're just not, there's not a lot of models of like, this is how you do this well. And so it's especially messy. And especially if we're not given the tools for emotional health in general, even in our own lives. Like most people aren't. And especially when you get into the institution of religion, a lot of times that's something that's as far as the East is from the West, emotional health type deal. And so really no one's set up for success, and it's just open doors for misunderstandings and all kinds of things to happen inside of it.
Yes. What I was finding was people were finding these tools like in the church world with Danny Selk and being a powerful person and picking up all this vocabulary. And it sounded great, having a culture of honor and being a powerful person and choosing connection and loving on purpose. But what I was finding was it was just words, but they were actually being weaponized because nobody was actually dealing with their hurt. They weren't actually dealing with their pain. They were just adding vocabulary and saying, this is still your fault because you're not honoring. This is still your fault because you're being powerless. You're being weak. So it just added vocabulary to their attack instead of fixing anything and bringing connection. And that's not Danny's fault.
Yeah.
But that was just the pattern that I was seeing. So I'm just like, okay, how do we actually heal the heart so that the tools actually work?
Yeah.
Right. Instead of it being theory, it's a practical walking out, and it's practically expressed.
Mm-hmm.
So you ended up diving into the pathway to freedom after being haunted by us. Tell us
what was that like?
Well, and okay, so I lead a church with my husband. So to give that context, we had felt the Lord really shift us into, while we're in all this pain and trying to figure things out, we felt the Lord shift us into like, we really felt like he was wanting to move. And so, in church world, you're like, signs, wonders, miracles, let's do this. And I do feel like he was calling us into that. And so we pursued it. We went to Randy Clark. We got impartation. We went to a healing conference, and I came back with COVID where I was sick for months. So
Oh, man.
the irony of that.
Oh,
But it didn't knock us down. I just thought that was ironic and laughed about it. But
totally.
but then we established a church for signs, wonders, miracles. The Lord's going to move, spirits going to break out, all the church things you say. And then the Lord just took us on this huge right turn. And he's like, if you want signs, wonders, and miracles, deal with your heart.
Interesting.
And he had us and our staff take this huge, huge journey of dealing with our pain. I think it was last February. He gave me, it was one of those words that you don't realize you're saying it until you're saying it out loud. And you're just like, oh, can I take that back? Where he was just like, okay, we're coming to the crossroads. It's time to put on your big girl pants and your big boy pants and deal with your junk. That we've been talking about this for 2 years now, but now it's time to live it. It's time to act it out. So it's time to dig it up and deal with it. And the staff seemed really on board. We were all kind of scared, but gave it a yes. And
Everyone's like, I guess that's inspiring. Sure, let's do it. And then the mess all starts unfolding. What did it look like all of a sudden to like put on your big girl pants and big boy pants? Like what did that look like at the crossroads all of a sudden?
For those ones, it just seemed like we all triggered all the time, all at once.
Yep.
And relationships that were stagnant were no longer stagnant, but that just meant turmoil because there wasn't peace there. It's like the waters were just stirred. And so all of my shame script and all of my abandonment script was just smacking me in the face.
Yeah.
And all of the performance things that happen in church and tons of dad wounds, mom wounds. It was all back and forth. And there's so much grace in it because overall, like our team did so incredibly amazing, but it did get really scary and really messy. And it did end up in some disconnections that still aren't reconciled yet.
Yeah.
And we had to be okay with that.
Yeah. I think that anytime people go, we just did a podcast recently about the cost of freedom. And I think anytime you go on the journey of healing, it brings up the pain and it can feel like a roller coaster in the beginning.
Yeah, especially when you're going with a collective group. It wasn't just singular. It's like our whole group is saying yes into something that's going to require a whole lot of like trust with each other, a whole lot of forgiveness with each other. It's going to require a lot of honesty, exposure with vulnerability, that all of a sudden happens. Like everything we as humans don't want to do, it's going to require. And it's not just a singular person. It's a whole group of people, which is like, it's either going to be the worst disaster or it's going to be something so beautiful on the other side of it.
Yes. So there was months where it felt like the complete disaster. And then it was like you could see glimmers of beautiful moments. And that was our summer last year. And, we lost relationships, grew some relationships. I would say that the biggest highs that we had repaired with some of our biggest lows that we had, but we just stayed committed to it because we were just trying to find our authentic selves because you can't build trust if you're not putting yourself out there, if you're not taking up your space. And that's what you were talking about, Justin, before with what we were talking about is I didn't know how to take up space at all. I shared my husband John's space and I was happy as pie to do that for a while. And so during this, that was me learning to take up space. And sometimes taking up space, I got attacked. And so I'm just like, do I actually want to take up space? So that was like the journey for me is I would use my voice. Was it perfect? I can think of some situations where I would have said things different.
Totally. As is
Says
every human in every situation. Yep.
But that's something that I have been trying to establish into our church is it's like, if we're saying that we want to bring people from being powerless and broken to being a powerful person that takes up space, like we have to be okay with the in-between.
Yeah.
Like the in-between is really messy.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling Justin right when we got on, like my voice is technically like a toddler.
Totally.
My voice is technically only like 2 or 3 years old.
Yeah, because you've only been practicing it for that long.
Right. And so last year was really me finding my space, finding my voice, finding who I was, finding what my heart came alive with. And it really was this emotional health and finding healing piece. And the transformation has been incredible.
What does it practically look like to have a voice? Like as you're learning this expression of yourself starting to come out, because I think a lot of people are really scared to have a voice. Again, it's that I don't know what it would even look like to have a voice. And when I do it, it feels like suddenly opening up starts causing disasters because it's challenging the normal of how people have related to me before. Like, what does that look like for you?
It is telling myself that my story's worth saying. That my narrative is true. My emotions are real. I'm allowed to have my emotions. I'm allowed to express my emotions. I'm allowed to express my opinions. And I'm also allowed to be wrong.
Yeah.
That was where I got hung up for a long time. I was like, if I use my voice and I use it incorrectly, I will cause a mess. And I don't want to hurt people.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't give myself that space to learn. Because my husband is a fluent communicator, fantastic communicator. And so I was like, I'm either nothing or I'm him. And until I'm him, my voice, like my mouth is sealed. But how do you develop that if you don't open your mouth?
You'd never be able to grow into that. I really love the context that you're giving, because I think every human needs this, the permission to be at a younger stage in different areas. Like there's some parts of me that I'm like a really fluent adult. And then there's other parts of me that I'm like, yeah, I'm still learning this very basic life skill. Like I'm still learning how to have secure attachments. I'm still a baby in that. Even though there's things that have happened throughout my life that have been really beneficial towards that, and things that have happened throughout my life that have been really unbeneficial. But like the concept of I can look at myself realistically for how long I've been on the journey and for what a big journey it is, and meet myself with grace there. And that sounds like what you're saying. You're like, I've only been practicing having a voice. And so it's okay that I am still in my toddler phase. And it's okay that sometimes I say things really well and sometimes it's not perfect.
Mm-hmm. And what I found is the more that I allowed myself to speak up, yes, there was loud voices coming against me sometimes.
Yeah.
But actually, more often than not, I was met with so much grace and so much cheerleading. Like for a while, I felt like if I just stood up and said names out of the phone book, people around me were just like, yes, I'm so proud of you. Like you did so good. And you were just up there and owning it. It didn't matter what I was saying. Like when I really look back and look at it, all I really got for probably 90% of the response was keep going, keep getting bigger. You're doing so well. But it's just like that 10% ends up being so loud and so full of pain that it's sometimes really hard to see that 90% that's around you saying, keep going.
It's really true. The 10% of pain can kind of eclipse the sun. You know, there's like all these people that are like, yeah. And then few people, or the few comments even. Sometimes it could just be like a couple comments, and that can completely overshadow. And the beauty of learning to look and hold both. So hard as a human, but it's so powerful.
One of the things that I can't help but think, it's already, how do I put this? It's scary for leaders to be vulnerable as it is. There's already this perfectionistic and performance-based thing that's all on leaders' shoulders universally. It's happening within the institution of religion. It's happening outside of it. It's just like, I have to be this thing as a leader. And so to me, it's a radical act of bravery when a leader says, I'm actually going to shift the entire dynamic of how I relate to the world. And I'm now going to open up and expose this whole other side of life. And I'm going to do things, and it's going to be so imperfect at times. And I'm going to have to fail forward repeatedly. And especially if you're within a culture that has a very clear expectation of what they think the leader has to be and how the leader has to act, you're up against all that. And so again, it's a radical act of bravery when we do that. There is going to be fallouts inside of those processes because we're not going to get it right. We are going to step on people's toes. We are going to be misunderstood inside of it. But what it is it starts giving a whole community permission to actually humanize themselves. Like, that's part of falling on our own sword in some ways as a leader is like, I'm going to fall on my own sword so that you can move forward as a whole company of people. And you can kind of see a model of like, you have permission. You have permission to not be perfect here. You have permission to be messy, but you're going to have to accept that I'm messy along the way too, if we're all going to have this like culture here, because I can't go back into performance and act like I figured out the health thing altogether, And so all that to say, like, when I'm looking at this, even at that, it's like, yeah, your story got really difficult. And yeah, there's a lot of pain, and we can go more down that journey of conversation, but there are leaders out there that are waiting for other leaders to say, hey, I tried it. I did it. And there's another side to it. It's not like it just ended in complete disaster. It did cost me a lot, but I got to the other side. And then there's a byproduct that's very beautiful that can arise out of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'll be a poster child for that message.
I love that.
Yeah.
How did John, like, I'm curious how, if there's maybe a little insight into how he was experiencing this, because obviously you chose into this. Was this something that then provoked him to choose into it, or was he on board from the get-go, or what was that like?
He was in support 100% of the time. I would say I was more gung-ho about pursuing it at the beginning. It wasn't that he didn't want to. I would say more like his plate was full and that wasn't his passion.
Sure.
But he saw me showing up, almost turning back into the teenager, because we started dating when we were like 14.
Aww.
And so he was seeing the me that he lost a long time ago show back up. And he was just like, wait a minute. Okay. Like, he never said that it was wrong, but he was just like, I'm absolutely on board with whatever this fruit is.
Wow.
We're going to dive into this deeper. He's always been a huge support. He's usually the one that's throwing me up on the stage. Like, you got this. Just say something. You can do it.
What did it practically look like, you guys going on the emotional health journey together?
A lot of the times we would be listening to different things, and then we'd be coming back together, having conversations about things that we learned about ourselves.
Cool. So
one of the first things we did was do like a bunch of personality tests of just like, what kind of like piece of the pie am I starting with? Mm-hmm. And so he found out he was a 3 and I was a 9. And so we would find out things about ourselves that we died laughing, that it was almost like we felt so seen.
Totally.
We're like, we can't be that messed up because we're a type.
She's talking about the Enneagram for any of you guys out there who don't know what that is. It's it's a personality type mix, and it can really help you understand. I think personality tests can be incredibly validating.
Yeah. Some people freak out because they're like, I'm being put in a box, but actually it's just like, here's kind of a window into your soul to understand that you're not the only one going through this stuff inside of the world. And here's probably like healthy ways of expressing yourself and things that are probably a little bit more messy. if things aren't resolved inside of you. And they're really helpful. And it's also helpful when you participate in that, because then grace overflows for partnership. So when you can go, oh, there's certain expressions, it's not the person across from me is just an idiot that doesn't align with my value system. It's that we're two different people who each have unique expressions, and it opens up a doorway for honor and respect, really, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. We've had a lot of tears, a lot of laughter, but really just digging into the dynamics of our relationship, of not just being on autopilot.
Mm.
I think of when I found my voice, he wanted me to find it. But in all reality, we had to redefine our relationship when two people started showing up to the relationship, and not just one. And so he never didn't want me to show up, but he had 17, 18 years of a certain dynamic.
Oh yeah. That was
And
normal.
so we had to go through, so we had to go through of, things where I normally wouldn't speak up. And so he thought that I liked things, or he thought that I preferred this, or all these different things. And I had to come back in and say, actually, I wasn't being true. Or actually, I have pain in this area, or all these different things. And then he was actually allowed to express, hey, it felt like you abandoned me. Like you would just shut down, and I didn't know what to do. And I have needs as well. And
wow.
creating that dialogue and creating that language with each other. And so we still get triggered,
Yep.
and we still fall into our patterns,
Yep.
but he's, it lasts for an hour instead of a week,
Yes.
because my response in the past would be like, give me 24 hours to even respond in any way, shape, or form to what you just brought to me.
Wow.
Yep.
That has to be creating such a depth of intimacy between the two of you. Is that true?
Absolutely. Like I was saying before, I would never, ever say that we had a bad marriage. I have loved our marriage, but there has been so much more that we didn't even realize was at access to us in intimacy. And so that has even opened up the door of expectations with intimacy with the Lord, because I didn't even know I was allowed to have intimacy that way with my husband. And then I'm like, oh, well, then I'm allowed to ask for this type of intimacy with Holy Spirit and with Jesus and with the Father. And, to most of it with friends and relationships. I'm allowed to have covenant relationships and intimacy with people. I'm allowed to express my needs. I'm allowed to express messy emotions, and they're not going to leave.
Wow. Yeah. It's such a different security when you are you and people don't leave than when you are just doing everything to not rock the boat and they're staying. Because I've done that before, where you tried to do everything perfectly to keep people to stay. And the truth is they still don't stay.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm sure you could say that, like, there were times that you were performing your best and people still left. And, but the really healing thing is when you find people that give you room to be human.
Yeah. Especially because you can go out of your way. I mean, I have before, where I'm going out of my way to love people as much as possible. And then even that, they've created assessments about what my love is and accusations about it. And it didn't matter. People are going to be and do whatever they're going to do. So why not just be messy? And it's great to have the people who will stick around in the midst of that messiness.
And what I have found is the longer that you are committed to being true and being vulnerable with everyone around you, the more and more people don't leave. That when they first walk in, they're just like, wait, what in the world is happening here? This is a very messy environment. Like, I don't know what to do with myself in this. But then they're just like, wait a minute, I actually have the freedom to say something that's inside of me, or I actually am allowed to not be perfect, or especially with in the church environment, I am allowed to question the Lord. I'm allowed to be angry. I'm allowed to not understand something that's going on. I'm allowed to feel emotions and it doesn't detract from my faith. Because the narrative I hear all the time, especially around the altars, are I'm going through something really hard and really painful. And everyone just keeps telling me to have faith.
Right.
Yep.
And so they equate having faith and the Lord's going to take care of them they just have to shove all the emotions because they're not having faith if they're still in pain in the process. So nothing has actually changed in their situation, but they've just been told, but you have to act like it changed because it will change.
Yeah.
Which is where a lot of pain ends up coming up for people because ultimately they're like, oh, within that system experience, I basically got told that I don't matter. Like, shut up, shut it down, have more faith. What's wrong with you?
Or that faith, it's almost like we create this definition of faith that is similar to a definition of strength that I think people have that is wrong, which is faith means I'm unaffectable.
Right.
It means I can go through something hard and not feel sad about it. You know, I think about Jesus. When Lazarus was dying, he had faith that Lazarus was coming back to life. He literally declared it already. And yet he cried with the people mourning because that's not actually what faith is. Faith isn't that we have no emotions. Faith isn't that we aren't ever negative or sad or have grief. It's a completely different concept.
Yeah, faith is an awareness of the nature of God. It's like it's connecting to who God is and God's heart towards humanity. Like to me, that's what faith is. Not that I don't have, not that I have all the perfect emotions and all the right beliefs in my head.
Yeah.
So when you guys were going through this process, like, what were some of your biggest hurdles as a couple? And then maybe a few highlights on some of the biggest hurdles as a group of people, because like, again, we're going back to, there was major hurdles that started hitting. What did those look like?
Yeah. I would say the hurdles of something that was really real that happened was we had a different culture until that point. And we had staff that were in that culture and accepted that culture and lived in that culture. We're comfortable in that culture.
Yeah.
It's what we created. It's what was there. It's what was acceptable. And then all of a sudden we said, the culture is changing. And for some people, that was really hard. In a very real sense, they were saying, I didn't sign up for this.
Right.
I signed up for the previous.
Totally.
And I know behaviors from the previous. And so a lot of the accusation that we would get would be behaviors from the previous culture. And it was really hard to navigate because you're trying to validate the emotions, but you're saying we're turning a corner. We're trying to do new. We're trying to look at this in a new perspective from a new set of eyes. And so the hurdle was getting that actual yes from people. And some of them chose yes. Some of them didn't choose yes. But the beautiful hurdle was that the new people that came onto our team last August, September, we started bringing new people into the new culture. So they weren't in that mix. They weren't in that transition. They were only in the new. And we got to see how fast they were empowered and just bloomed in a culture of being vulnerable and open and building trust. And so that's what really helped us get through some of the stickier relationships and connections that we were still trying to figure out the in-between. Everybody got to watch people walk in just the newness. And we're like, okay, we're definitely doing this because they are beautiful. Well, we're going to keep going.
What you're saying is so true. And I find this even in our own marriage, when we were working on creating a new culture. Yeah. The transition phase of something old to something new is just hard.
You can feel excruciating.
For anything. When you're in the process of change, I mean, even me going through PTSD and working on getting more when we're transforming, we know we're moving forward and we can see where we're headed and we can see the goodness of that. We also have people experiencing that remember the old, and and those experiences are very real and affect things. Like in our marriage, Justin has transformed a lot in our marriage, and I've transformed a lot in our marriage, but there's seasons where it's like, even though you're acting different now, all I can remember is who you've been for years.
Right.
And that transition spot is like, you're not fully a new thing yet, but you're not fully the old thing anymore. We talked about this in the process, the cost of freedom or whatever, the price of freedom, how when a caterpillar goes into the cocoon, it becomes mush and then it becomes a butterfly. But when you're doing the process of healing and freedom relationally, you often have the old gone before the new is secure.
Right.
And so that is really hard for the people around you to know who you are becoming, to hold their view of you open with flexibility. You know, like, oh, wait, they can't, maybe they are changing. Maybe they are transforming. Maybe this new thing is real.
Maybe it is good.
Yeah. The tension of the in-between is a very painful part for everyone. So I can understand how that'd be hard. And then it's true when you start something, when you have a set culture and new people are coming in and they're not having to balance the old and the new, it's much easier to see
freshness, and guards are not.
Yeah. Because the old memories aren't clashing against the new direction. It's a tricky transition for everybody in growth. I mean, I remember some of my friends, when they would get into counseling, their personality would so radically change.
Right.
That you would be like, I know this is good. I wanted you to get into counseling. I wanted you to find your voice, but you're not who you used to be. And you're not who you're going to be yet. You're just in that messy in between. And that is a confusing space for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. As you were watching kind of people engage the invitation and they continued to participate and stay with you on this journey, what were you seeing evolve out of people? Like, how was that being expressed within the environment?
That was probably my favorite part that helped balance out some of the painful parts. Was all of last year, or especially the second half of last year and into this year, we have watched so much transformation. We were even just sitting in our staff meeting this morning, just looking back. Even the people who were around the table, who they are now is incredible. The way that they're showing up, the way like their giftings are just shining and they have the confidence to do what they feel called to do. And just knowing how shut down they were. Such small, like we use like small and big a lot of times of just how small they were. Because they just didn't value themselves, or they were so wrapped up in pain, or just all these different reasons. And just seeing all of these people just bloom has made the price worth it. Has made even me I feel like I had to go a little bit before being a leader.
Yeah.
And so John and I were kind of being vulnerable and put out there before it was the norm.
Totally.
But it made that uncomfortable, wiggly, painful season worth it, that we get to see people doing the same thing over and over and over. It's, yeah, that's what I feel like church should be about. Like, that's the point of the church coming together, is watching that transformation.
What have you seen transform in cult? So you went on this journey, and if you were to summarize the journey, it's like learning to face your pain, learning to own your emotions and experiences, and learning to have value and a voice. Would that be like the overall journey, or how would you summarize the overall journey?
Yeah, I would definitely say those. And it's really finding out that you don't have to be a cookie cutter to be who you are and make a difference.
So as you started to create,
it's finding voices.
I love that. As you started to create that culture, what happened in your church?
What happened in our church? Whew. Well, I guess I can just jump straight to last November. So we had all of this swirl, all the things. We felt like we were kind of licking our wounds, getting our heads on straight. Things were finally starting to feel some traction into September and October. And we're like, okay, we're actually going to make it. We're not going to die. But I wouldn't say we were thriving. We were just in it together and felt like we kind of just locked arms and like, okay, we're going to do this. And November 6th came around. And I'm skipping a couple of steps, but the Lord just, we call it like the thunderclap. We were in pre-service prayer, praying, doing our thing, not going after anything, just praying for that day. And in the middle of prayer, there was literally like this thunderclap heard, and everyone fell. Everyone hit the floor. Whoa. Nobody moved. I don't even know. I don't feel like I was even hardly conscious. So I'm kind of telling you the stories that I heard a little bit. I was definitely one of the ones laid out on the floor. The only thing I remember is I was praying with this lady, and you could feel like the like electricity in the air. And all of a sudden she was like, "Oh, it's right now. Oh, it's right now. Oh, it's right now." And then bam, everyone's out.
Wow.
We couldn't start the service. My husband finally drags himself off the floor, goes into the sanctuary. You know, there's people milling about, waiting for, where is the worship team? Where is the staff? Where is everybody? And he's just like, so we can't start. Holy Spirit has shown up in the back and nobody can get off the floor.
Wow.
And after a while, people started kind of literally dragging themselves into the sanctuary. And so he just said, if you want what is happening, these people are going to lay hands on you. He's like, I don't know what's happening, but if you want it, they just got it. So they're going to give it to you.
Wow.
And it just started us on this insane journey that, let me tell you, with outpouring and revival, if emotional health and connection, if that is not the core of your church and relationship, if connection is not the core, it is so messy that revival can cause so much pain and so much jadedness that I know is it's not the Lord's heart.
Yeah.
But, you know, people show up to it.
Yep.
And a lot of times desperate people show up to outpourings and revivals. And it was this base work that has let us keep true to ourselves, keep this going. It's still going. It's still crazy. You never know what's going to happen from day to day. But that was another hurdle that we had to jump over, is the Lord showed up in a very big way. All of a sudden, the world was showing up at our church. So talk about all different cultures showing up all at once. And we had to navigate what we call revival culture, which the typical revival culture is not about connection, and it's not about relationship. It's what we were finding. And this is a kind of a blanket statement. So I'm not saying everybody is this way.
Sure.
But in a general sense, we kept feeling like this culture feels like friends with benefits. Like they just wanted to come in and take from us and expect things from us and expect things from the Lord. They wanted the shortcut, in a sense, is what it felt like. Just give me the quick answer. And if you don't give me the quick answer, then I'm going to be upset with you, and this isn't real. And we had to make some hard calls to keep our core values, the core values. within this outpouring.
Which
and
is
part of that was
basically
stopping announcing guests, because people would show up for man and it felt icky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is like you had to learn how to not people please.
Yeah.
You had to learn how to like,
way.
What do we do to steward this thing that's happening? Not what do we do to make everybody happy?
And let me add a little bit to this, because as you're talking about revival culture, I think that there's a lot of our listeners that may not have even experienced something like that. But it's like when our human mundaneness all of a sudden gets fully encapsulated or overtaken by an experience, a spiritual experience where the like love as an expression shows up in a way that starts creating miracles and wild things that happen that transcend our normal human like understanding, where all of a sudden people are having healing in their bodies, or they're having healing emotionally. It's not just they're working to process things. It's like there's a goodness of God that overtakes an entire company of people in a way that is affecting them on ways that transcend practical, normal experiences. Is that kind of one way to articulate it and break it down, Dabs, do you think?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden you have a culture where it's like, I mean, we heard in America, there was a whole conversation about the revival that was taking place at the one college, Asbury College. And that was one expression of a revival. But when those things start hitting, it's like something feeds the human spirit and soul, and people can't help but like, I want to be in the presence of that because there's a life that overtakes me internally. There's an excitement that happens inside of me.
There's feeling alive for the first time.
Where hope overtakes you and endless possibilities.
And purpose.
And then
connection.
And so there's this longing for us as humans to be reconnected to that source of life in that way, not just going through religious dogmatic traditions of following just rules and regulations, but actually having an experience with our Creator that brings us alive inside. And so when you get into those atmospheres, and people who've been part of it, they know it's completely different than just a church service. You were experiencing abundant life that suddenly saturates something inside of you, and you awaken. And so it's an addictive place to want to participate in, because it's bringing us back to our original connection that we were designed for. And so especially people who haven't been rooted in an emotional, healthy thing, they both bring their need for that, which is something we all need, and also a messiness that doesn't have that culture. So like you said, there can be this thing of like, this almost like an orphan mindset that goes, I want to take from everything I can here, rather than lovingly coming alongside you guys and being like, how can I participate and give and love you as much as this environment that you've cultivated is benefiting me?
It's very true.
So it can be, like you said, it can be very messy. And all of a sudden you guys at least have this like foundation of your team has an intimacy and a heart connect that goes, all right, let's sit down and figure out how to move this thing forward based on the culture that we value.
Yeah. And one of the things that we noticed is we were watching ourselves being triggered. I think we kind of got into our own little bubble of a great culture that was being formed when this revival started, is where we really got to see this culture in action with ourselves, where people were encountering the Lord. They were transforming. Like one guy, he was really shy, really quiet, encounters the Lord, and is just like, the easiest way to say it is like this wild child where, if you didn't have the space to come in with curiosity, you'd be like, no, But then you would just look into his eyes and you're like, that is the purity of God. There is nothing in him that is wanting attention. That is the spirit, how the spirit was coming out in him. Because he would do like roller coaster noises. It was kind of like, it turned into like the best sound ever. Like during prayer meetings or during the service, you'd be ministering and you don't know how it worked, but you just hear him in the back. Shy guy, didn't talk much. All of a sudden was in the back laying hands on people going, wee.
He's just overwhelmed with joy in life. Yeah.
And it broke through so much, but it allowed people to walk out their transformation. Because for him, those sounds coming out of him was actually really scary at the beginning,
Oh,
where he was
sure.
just like, is this God? What is happening to me? Who am I? What is this? And that culture that built that trust of like, hey, let's walk this out together. Let's figure it out. We're not judging you, even if it's wrong or quote unquote wrong.
Sure.
Like you got to get through that part to figure it out.
Totally. So
And-
almost the messiness that you allowed yourselves to go through, you now have less judgment with others in that process.
Yes, because that's where I was going with it. Thank you. I lost my thought until you said that. When we started hitting that separate culture, we were used to our bubble. And what we noticed is we were just like, wait a minute, we're kind of being triggered by them. Where yes, this is not okay. But we can't just send them away either. Like you can't just like build a wall and shut the doors.
Yeah.
And us being messy with each other and it being okay, we had to switch our mindset of like, okay, we're not going to participate in the taking, in the what do you have for me? This is all about me. But we still had to come with compassion of hearing the hunger part, of stirring that need that they want of the Holy Spirit and meeting them there instead of just saying, oh, you're just another person trying to take from me. Just go away.
Right.
Of coming in and saying like, you actually do have a need. You just have no idea how to express that need or how
so
to
good.
obtain that need. So we're here to help.
Yeah. I love that. Coming alongside of people instead of making judgments. And a lot of times we've experienced in churches being cut off if we're different or people don't understand or whatever. And you're talking about a more relational culture, which is like, we're not cutting people off. We're trying to figure out what we do to meet people where we're at without losing
Get curious.
who we are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's really powerful.
Yeah.
So you started off by really wanting a move of God to happen, pursuing it through signs and wonders, and then instead going towards emotional health and finding it that way. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I feel like that's the context that links this all together was in October, right before the roof came off, in a sense. I had this encounter with the Lord where he had me just looping on the scripture. I think it was like 2 Timothy 1:7, where it's like, I have not given you a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And he brought me through these different movements where he was just like, I went through power through Azusa. I went through love with Toronto. And he's like, I want to pour out a sound mind. I want to pour out. And I'd like, you know how you loop in a bad way? Like I was looping in like this encounter in a good way where it was just like, I want to bring a sound mind. I want to bring, like, I don't even know how long I was in it. I probably looked like a complete weirdo in the sanctuary, but they're used to that now.
I love it.
And so that is the base. We do have signs, wonders, and miracles every week. There's cancer being healed on a regular basis. There's scars being healed. There's emotional trauma being healed. There's PTSD being healed instantly. Like all of these incredible signs, wonders, and miracles. But the part that I get super excited about is I'm like, okay, great. You have your freedom. You have this release. You have your need met. Like, how do we walk this out? How do you practically walk this out and get to keep it?
Yeah.
And so that's what we've been passionately pursuing was how do you get to keep this open, full, vulnerable, intimate life after you leave this room?
Yeah.
Because in the room, it's really easy.
Right. It's wonderful when you're in an experience of love.
Yeah.
But then figuring out how to implement that in
and
everyday
live a lifestyle
life.
and create it. One of the things that, because I grew up in a history where I experienced so many miraculous expressions of God, where for me, like when I talk about faith on this podcast and stuff, it's not just some logic thing that I've decided to settle into because I studied enough and I decided to settle on something. I was having spiritual experiences alongside my journey of exploring God. And there was a radical impact inside of it that like probably saved me from committing suicide because it was so powerful and healing in areas of my heart that I didn't have a logical capacity to know how to practically heal something inside of me, but I could have experiences with God that would heal portions of me that was necessary for those moments and in those seasons. But one thing that I saw is that people were having spiritual encounters, but they were, I mean, for lack of better words, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. They were living on another planet and not actually having a practical,
not learning relational
skills where you could actually relate in healthy, powerful dynamics where you could grow and develop. And so I said to myself, I was like, God, like, I want all this, but what I want at the root of everything is a deep connection to emotional health. Like I want something rewired inside of me that I can hand something away practically to someone that actually is an expression of the gospel, where it's actually the good news because something got healed inside of them and that they could maintain a lifestyle expressed like this. And, you know, for me, it was like, you're talking about the sound mind expression, like power, love, and a sound mind. And God coming in a revival, it's like, I want to bring a sound mind to my people where everyone is actually getting the practical transformation and tools. And then in the midst of that, having an overflow of the miraculous that's touching them. And that's the thing for me. I'm like, God, do this practical thing inside of me and then bring me back into the tangible power encounters where the abundant expression of life overtakes, where I get undone. And in a moment, things get resolved inside of me and inside of people alongside of this. And to me, it's not one or the other. It's a partnership of both being blended together. And I believe that that's where we're at. There's an invitation for humanity to engage in these type of experiences where it's not just, hey, I got lost in emotional health and now I have some emotional health tools, but I have emotional health tools and the kingdom of heaven starts visiting me in radical ways that illuminate the way that I see life and the way that I see relationships and the way that I see God and the way that I express myself in ways that return me to an original design and intent that God had dreamed for me long before I ever found myself here.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm just thinking about this. Cause you're in the middle of like what we would typically call like a revival. Does that feel like how you'd explain it? Or like an outpouring where it is like a fun adventure and Holy Spirit's doing so much and you're seeing the tangible evidence of God's interacting with the planet regularly. Does that feel true?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But
even on Sunday, I was laughing. I was like, how do you even laugh for this long? How, like, even after 8 months, how do you spend this many hours laughing? What are we laughing about?
Which we should actually.
And then the previous Friday before, I was groaning on the floor and got carpet burn and a bruise on my forehead. And you're just along for the ride. And afterwards, it's the tools that you're like, Lord, what did you do in me?
Yes.
That's where the tools come into play of like, what did I get free from? What encounter did I actually have? What identity did you actually give me or uncover?
Which I would love to have a conversation about this. Maybe we do another podcast about, because the more I've learned about somatic healing, the more I understand why people encounter God in physical ways.
Expressions.
And I'd love to teach on that so that people, because I think people just see videos of people falling in church or laughing uncontrollably,
being tossed around,
and it feels disorienting to some people and it overwhelming, and you're like confused. And I know there's been so many times where somebody would like shake on the floor for like an hour, and I would at the end you'd be like, well, what's different? They'd be like, I have no idea. And so you'd be like, well, what is this? But the more I've had PTSD and studied the body and the somatic needs that we have in our body, I'm now like, what I did in the breath work thing is very similar to what you do in church, which is You have a physical experience that is releasing pent up trauma and stored emotions that your body has had. Whether you're laughing for an hour, that is a way that your body is getting out of fight or flight. Your body is getting out of the amount of emotional experiences you've had. Like, there's so many things we train our consultants to do to help people physically step out of it. And so when I see revival now, I'm like, oh, it's God supernaturally intervening in certain people's bodies to get a somatic release for them to be able to contain more love than fear, and more connection than disconnection, more safety than threat. It's actually like a rewiring of our body memories. Anyway, that's it.
No, and on that, I mean, like, that's where you have people who are like, I don't know, I was shaking around on the ground, and then months later, I just didn't have the same anger I ever used to have. It all disappeared after that. It's like, you went through an intense somatic release where love engaged your heart, and all of a sudden your body released years of unforgiveness that you had been holding on to, and anger that your body didn't know how to. It's been pent up. And, you see, again, modern emotional health is proving theories right now of stuff of like, people be like, well, why did that work for you? Now modern
psychology
is going, oh yeah, actually your body needs to release these things, and this is how it does it. And you're like, oh, that makes sense. God has been participating with me in my emotional health journey, even when I didn't have language for it, when I was having these weird experiences.
Like a deer, let's say a lion is running after a deer, and the deer goes into freeze to like pretend it's dead, so that the lion like goes away from it or whatever. Let's say the lion gets distracted. The deer then will get up and shake out of freeze, get the freeze out of its body so that it's not traumatized. So the next time it's chased, it's not traumatized. Otherwise, animals would never be able, they'd all be in PTSD because they'd all be running for their lives constantly. And so our own ability to have, to get out our trauma from our, anyway, this is a tangent, but my whole point before I went into this tangent was we were just talking to her before we started about how who is going through the Compassion Project with you?
A group of my friends.
Yeah. So in the middle of
it's just a group of us that wanted to do it.
I love it. So in the middle of, this is what I wanted to say, in the middle of revival, which I think oftentimes people get so lost in the experiences that they're not growing the other muscles in their life. And so in the middle of that, there's still this emotional health decision you're making, which is we're still growing together. We're still processing together. I've seen that element lack in so many revivals where people ended up getting divorced after revival or whatever, because people put all of their relational life on hold, all of their emotional health on hold to almost worship the experiences happening. And so I just think it's remarkable. It looks like you have something to say about it.
Yes, that has been a huge thing that we have pushed back on from day one. Of, you are powerful people. You need to manage your needs. You need to manage your family. The Lord's never going to sacrifice your family for this outpouring. We can do it without you. He's doing it by himself. We're just partnering. We give a yes when we are capable of giving our yes, and that's it. Yeah. And there is sacrifice, but it's never sacrificing your connections. It's never sacrificing your relationships. And so it has been team members saying, hey, I'm getting really tired and worn out, or hey, my kids really need me this week. And people don't show up for the week. And the core values that we keep going back to is vulnerability, growth, and connection. And with whatever decisions are not breeding those three things, then we have to sit back down and reevaluate.
I love that.
So good.
Well, it's very, very good.
I just feel so inspired by this. I think that there are people who are listening to this podcast that you've been participating in an emotional health journey along with us. And there's an invitation from heaven where God wants to actually land on your emotional health process and encounter you in ways that transcend the natural experiences that you have, where there's a goodness that overtakes you, an abundant life that overtakes you, that takes you from maybe some of the emotional health process that might take someone 5 years and does something in a year. inside of you, and certain aspects of things that have been locked up inside of you for years, that one portion of it, he just wants to heal in a moment where you actually get connected to a radically loving God who wants to be involved inside of your story right here and now inside of this moment and break all the boxes that you have around your life. Like part of what's happening with Tiffany's experience is that he's breaking all the boxes, from the emotional health boxes to the spiritual boxes. It's the whole community is having their boxes shattered. And we can either live mundane lives where we live trapped inside of these little boxes where we're consumed with our fears and our insecurities and our needs to have things a certain way, or we can go break my boxes, shatter my boxes. I want to live an adventurous life where like I get overtaken by things that shatter the mundane and bring the people around me fully alive.
Yeah. Do you have anything that you want to add, Tiffany?
After that, no.
Well, I more just meant like any part of your story or anything left on your heart that you haven't gotten to share yet, or just where you're like, oh, I have this one other thought. You don't have to have any. I just wanted you to have room.
I just feel like the Lord is in emotional health. It's not a psychology thing. It's not a world thing. This is what he's wanting to do, especially after COVID, where it was, no matter what your views on COVID was, it literally bred disconnection, that people were unsafe.
Yeah.
And so the Lord is showing up with the answer, which is connection and vulnerability and stepping back to each other and finding our voices and letting other people have voices. And I just keep saying it over and over, that the Lord is in your emotions. Emotions are wonderful. Emotions are godly. You are godly.
I love that. Do you think you would just pray for everybody listening?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Holy Spirit, just come in and wrap around each person that is listening to this right now. Wrap around them. Bring your peace. Bring that hope that you could be in this, that you will meet them right where they are, that their encounter is a second away, that they can say yes. They have the power to say yes. They have the capacity to say yes to the journey that you want them to go on, because your heart wants them free. Your heart wants them big. Your heart wants them powerful. And their big doesn't take up anybody else's big. That you are here to set free, whether it's in an instant or it's on that 4-year journey. You know exactly what we need. You have the complete context. You know how our bodies need to move. You know what emotions need to come up. You know what memories need to come to the surface, and you know what relationships need to be restored. And so we just say yes. We say yes to your movement of a sound mind. I just release that sound mind over everyone that is watching. Whether you're a Christian or not, take it. Take the sound mind. Take the blessing of a sound mind that the Lord is releasing right now. I bless you with it. I bless you with the courage to move forward. I bless you with the capacity to look at yourself and look at others through compassion and love. And Spirit, just go and meet them right where they are. Encounter them right now. Father, encounter them with that Father love that releases identity, that releases your goodness. And we just say yes all over again, right in this moment. We just give a fresh yes to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I have 2 last questions. I know we're at time, but
That's fine. I'm loving this. So.
You talked about going on the journey of having a voice. Why do you think it was important that happened before this outpouring at your church?
Because, and this is even hard for me to say because I'm still young in this, I feel like that my voice is one of the main ones in the church pushing this forward. And while I have my husband's support, I realized the lead that I'm supposed to take. And if I hadn't found my voice, I would not be where I am right now.
So you're actually like the picture I have is like you're actually like a directional voice that is keeping a true north while this is while this is happening. And if you didn't know how to have a voice, there'd be a part of your true north missing in this experience.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Which is still, like I was saying, it's very hard to say it, but I know it's very real and very true.
Yeah.
And so I keep going. This is why I showed up today on your podcast.
I know. I was thinking the whole time. I was like, she's doing such a good job at taking up space and having a voice. It's very impressive and it's beautiful. I think that's what I was thinking, but I obviously don't know your story, which is that there was like a guardrail for what God wanted to do in your church, and he needed you to be ready for that. Are you having emotions over there?
A little bit.
What are you
Good
feeling?
ones, though.
Yeah, tell me about it.
I keep having emotions this week of like, I'm here. This is me. Look what he's doing with it so quickly. And I get to just be here and not have to hide and dream big and say hard things. And I don't know. I'm just here. I haven't been here for a very long time.
I love that. That made me emotional.
Yeah, me too.
You could just feel the tenderness of you. And that's honestly the whole point. It's not that we're supposed to perform. It's literally that we're supposed to just be here and be who we are. That's very beautiful. Well, this is a good episode. Did you like Pathway to Freedom, and should people sign up?
Oh my gosh. Guys, for real, like if people could see the video, I literally have my notes sitting next to me because they don't leave my book bag.
Oh, I love that. That's wonderful.
That's so cool.
No, it was seriously life-changing. My friend and I went through it, and now she's going through the master class. And so I am absolutely over the moon that she is doing that it is a dream, that she is taking up all of her space and she is glorious in her space. And I'm so excited.
I love that.
I loved meeting her, by the way. She's wonderful. I can't wait to have her. Like, it was such a great time in my interview with her. I'm so thankful.
Yeah. Well,
yep, she's one of my favorite people.
I love that.
Makes sense. So if you guys want to join Pathway to Freedom or apply for LCMC, you can go to Justin and Abby, that's abi.com, and you can sign up there. And is there any way, do you want anyone reaching out to you at all, Tiffany, or is it like, we don't need our church knowing right now?
I was like, people are going to want to come from this podcast episode.
Let's see. What's the best way? Don't reach out to me. I'm horrible about responding. So
that's real. That's very real.
Yeah. The website is wearethegate.com. I think they have email on there.
And
they're much better about responding.
Wonderful. That's great. If people want to visit, they can just show up.
Absolutely.
I love that. It makes me want to go.
Yeah. We should head out there.
We all should.
Yeah, we should. Tiffany, thank you for being with us today. I had such a good time. My heart got blessed. Abby's did. I cried some.
I cried some.
So, yeah.
I cried some.
Bunch of crybabies. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. If you got impacted by this, share it with somebody. And rate and review. Let us know, like, online. Get online. That so promotes it. Like, share it all over the place on social media and stuff like that. So, all right. I'm going away. Goodbye.